In this video, we'll cover some ways to devise key points for your speeches. The first question we face when preparing any type of speech is, what's it going to be about? And often, the audience determines the topic. So let's say, for example, you're invited to talk about a job in front of a group. And you say, oh, there are 4 main things I do as a librarian. And other times, the topic drives the audience. So let's say you want to complain about road repairs. You got to address the city council. And you say, oh, the 28th Street project has taken too long, cost too much, and endangered too many. In these cases, well, the rhetorical situation provides hints about what to talk about. So if you've only got 5 minutes for a speech, the history of Western civilization is a pretty poor topic. Usually, the more pressing question is, what do I include or exclude from this talk? Let's say I decide to speak on the topic of online education. So I actually like both online and in-class teaching, and I think the reporting about online and traditional education is really a little bit hyperbolic. Apparently, if you believe the reporting, online education will rip out the throat of traditional education while four-year colleges stab online courses in the eye, if you believe the reporting. And I still sometimes engage academic audiences who see online education as a barbarian at the gates, and I don't think that. So if that's what I want to talk about, let's say I land on the thesis statement, online education won't overturn traditional universities. I could certainly explain my basic perspective on this in about 6 to 7 minutes. So once I have my topic, I can start hunting around for the key points, the ways that I'm going to explain my idea. And here we can jump back to our good friend Aristotle. He was very concerned with how to invent speeches. His book, The Rhetoric, has a lot of good advice about how to come up with key points, and many of those general topics continue to be exceptionally helpful. So I want to talk about 6 prompts for inventing key points. Now, there's no one right way to use these. They're simply ideas to help you think through the topic. So first, short-term, long-term. Maybe time is the right way to view the situation. So in my case, the reporting over online education had like a big surge a couple of years ago, and that seems relevant. So as you can see here, I've got a short-term impact point and a long-term one. In my second point, I would probably talk about how each form of education has its own strengths. Next, past, present, and future. Obviously, this is kind of a variation on the short-term, long-term approach. So in this case, I introduce an analogous element. Online education of today is like the mail-order classes of the past. Both cater to different needs. Increase, decrease. Is there some type of qualitative or quantitative change going on? So if you look at this version of the speech, an increase in one area doesn't necessarily mean a decrease in another. Cause and effect. This is just a basic causal structure. Again, the idea behind both points is that online and traditional education appeal to different types of students. The cause of adult learning will have different effects on the different types of learning. Division. Are there natural breaks in the content? So, for example, my thesis has a comparison. One form isn't going to overturn the other. So the 2 items can be broken out. So here, I can argue that each form of education has its strength, but these are not necessarily mutually exclusive. Thus, one won't overturn the other. I'll say that division's one of the most useful forms for inventing points, but it's also the one that's most rooted in the topic itself. So I don't know the divisions unless I know the topic. My basic key point speech about my own job lends itself to a division speech. So if you look here, I teach, I do service, and public outreach. Definition. Maybe the speech is just an extended definition of an important term. For example, a researcher could start off by saying, I'm a climatologist studying the solar impacts of Arctic ice. In that case, each key term is a point needing definition. This is also partially a division speech. In conclusion, the invention of key points is probably the most difficult stage to generalize about. What you talk about fundamentally shapes how you talk about it. And there's no one right way to talk about a subject. I think it's very useful to see what your speech looks like in a couple of different ways. Maybe you don't run your speeches through all 6 models as I've done here, but it wouldn't hurt either. These 6 topics are just a sample. Aristotle lists 28 valid topics, and there's still even more than that. And by the way, if you look at the arguments I've had here, my arguments have focused on minimizing the differences between online and in-class education. You could run all 6 of these topics again for the opposing argument, maximizing the difference between the two. All of this is to say, invention is not linear. You're constantly revising. Nevertheless, these topics offer a good starting place.